Chavre, how are you? I hope everyone is gesund, stark, und freilich, begashmis, und beruchnis. I hope everyone is healthy, strong, and happy physically and spiritually. As usual, we'll start off with tzedakah, since we started with tzedakah a couple of years ago. Gdei tzedakah shemakarev segula. Mashiach should come now. It's Erev Shabbos Kodesh Parshas Boy. And this week, Mr. Hashem, Wednesday will be Yud Shvat, the beginning of the 7060th year of the Rebbe's Nesias, the Yom Elula of the Friedrich Rebbe, and when the Rebbe became the Nasi officially, Yud Aleph Shvat a year later. So what is the connection between all these Inyanim? But first, let's start with a prayer. We're going to say a Lashon from the Haggadah of Pesach, which comes and is connected to this week's Parsha. In the Haggadah, there's a part where it says, Keneged arba bonim dibre Torah. The Torah is speaking, corresponding to 4 sons. And it says, V'sheini yidei lishol. And to the one who is not interested, you could say, or can't ask. He doesn't even realize or have even enough knowledge to be able to ask a question. Apsachle, you have to engage him that he should be curious enough to ask the questions. You should tell your child that day, that for this reason, the Eibishter did this to me when he took me out of Mitzrayim. So this is a pasuk from this week's Parsha. That's Kapitel Yud Gimel, pasuk Ches. You should tell your son on that day, saying, it is on account of this that Hashem did for me when I left Egypt. There's so much to talk about over here, but I think we'll start straight away. I believe very much always starting at a basic level. What we're going to talk about today, I'm going to focus on the basics. Mamish, literally the basics. Like the Rambam would begin to say for Yisoidis, V'amud Achot Chachmas, the foundation of all the foundations and the pillars of wisdom is that, etc. The Chinuch, as usual, the Sefer HaChinuch, I believe there's Neflois M'Teiresecha, there's wonders and depth and profundity to no end. Also, I just want to say that this week's Parsha is the first time since the beginning of the Chumash, Chamisha Chumshe Torah, which we have like more than a double number of mitzvahs, 2 numericals. In other words, 10, more than 10, 20. So for the first time, and I find it also ironic, Stam, I didn't think of it till now, the famous Rashi in the beginning on the first pasuk of Bereshis, it says that the Torah should have started with HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem. Why does it start with Bereshis Bara Likim? And he mentions that it should have started with HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem because in a way that's the first mitzvah as we became a nation. Even though we have mitzvahs Milah before, mitzvahs Puravu. But from here we see already the significance of how important Parshas Boy is, that in a certain sense, Parshas Boy, what it says over here in our Parsha, should be considered the beginning. And as we say, even a first thought, however you call it in English, is also considered something that has to be thought about, that it's given a special worthiness and importance and significance. And now I'm thinking that it's not only that we have the mitzvah of HaChodesh in this week's Parsha, but it's the first time we were getting loaded with mitzvahs. Until now, there are so many Parshas that have no mitzvahs. But from Parshas Boy and onward starts the Parshas where we have the Torah as a book which gives us instructions, a manual for life, guidance, etc. Anyways, now we look in the Chinuch. So let's start off with, we have this pasuk which it says, V'yigadat levincha, you should tell your child. Now even before we look at the Chinuch, I just want to say just straight up, how relevant is this mitzvah to our daily life? We have the mitzvah, we have the story that Hashem took us out of Egypt. Someone could argue and say, it's a story that happened a long, long time ago in a galaxy far away. What difference does it make to me today now? So obviously it's completely wrong. We also have a klotz kasha. Someone's going to ask, by the way, we say b'chol day v'day b'chol yom v'yom chayav adam liris es atzmi ki liyotzim b'mitzrayim. That's what the Alter Rebbe writes, but it's connected with the Mishnah based on the pasuk, which we say later in Dvarim. L'man tizker es yoyim tzeischo me'eretz mitzrayim kol yimei chayecha. Remember forever, every single day. L'man tizker es yoyim tzeischo me'eretz mitzrayim, the day that you went out of Egypt, every single day of your life. So we have this concept of, let's call it, mitzvahs, schiras, yitzias Mitzrayim. There's a mitzvah of remembering the going out of Mitzrayim, which is a mitzvah. And then we have another mitzvah, which is mitzvahs sipur yitzias Mitzrayim, the mitzvah of retelling the tale and the story of going out of Egypt. This pasuk, v'yigadat levincha, actually, is the mitzvah that the Chinuch brings and the Rambam brings. It's one of the 613 mitzvahs, and it's the mitzvah of Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim, of having to tell the story of Yitzias Mitzrayim. There's another mitzvah midiraisa, even though it's not counted as one of the 613, which is mitzvah schiras Yitzias Mitzrayim, means to remember it every day. We also say it as one of the shesh schiras that we say every day. The Alter Rebbe brings it down in Hilchos Krishma. The Rambam brings it down in Hilchos Krishma. It's connected to the Mishnah Masechtas Pesachim, where over there it says the idea is, on this pasuk of the Mantiskes, Im Tzeischem Eretz Mitzrayim, Kol Yimei Chayecha. But those places talk primarily about the mitzvah of Schiras Yitzias Mitzrayim. We're going to talk today more specifically about the mitzvah of Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim. But the importance of the sugya, of the event, the meaning of Yitzias Mitzrayim really is included in both of these mitzvahs. So I'll read from the Chinuch what he writes on this week's Parsha. So let's address the question. It says we should remember the day that when I'm Mitzrayim, it says atzmoi. You literally have to see yourself as you went out of Egypt. And by the way, I don't know if I saw this anywhere else, but that could be Berumas in the pasuk where he says over here, he's talking to the Father for all future generations. When you tell your son the story of Yitzias Mitzrayim on the night of Pesach, which by the way, the Agoda is called the Agoda because it comes from the pasuk V'yigadata, you have to be reliving the experience. My friend, Mr. Father, it's totally dependent on your experiencing the whole Pesach and the Seder, how you're going to live it and experience it in front of your children, because the message to them you're going to give to them is, I'm a free man. And when was I liberated? Today and every day, and then for all time, with the Pulanim Shechas, that every day I'm being liberated. The Jewish nation's identity became a different identity, as we'll soon discuss. But first, the question is, sometimes it's brought down when we think about this idea, because if not, how do we know that we have to always be indebted in gratitude to the Eibishter, that Hashem redeemed us? Because if not, we know that not one Jew escaped the prison of Egypt, concentration camp, Pisim and Anses, when they were in exile in Egypt. But that sounds pretty limiting, because 3,300 plus years ago, the Jews were in exile for 200 years, therefore would still be in exile today. It's a different world, it's different weapons, etc., etc. So if we look at it just in the physical sense, it's completely hard to relate to. So what does it mean? How do we relate to it? So we'll get to that, but we can get to that. Let's take a couple of steps. First, let's look into the Chinuch. I love the Sefer Chinuch. It's so illuminating. It's so tremendous. He writes, Mishorshi Mitzvazu, from the theme of the mitzvah is, I'm not going to read every single word, but I'll say the main points. You shouldn't wonder, how can we have so many mitzvahs connected to Yitzias Mitzrayim, Mitzvasei, Mitzvasei, Ki hu Yesod Gadol V'Amud Chazak B'Teiroseinu U'Be'emunaseinu. It seems like Yetzias Mitzrayim is the foundation of our entire religion. And this is the point I want to bring out from the Chinuch. According to what the Rambam is saying now, the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim is the irrefutable response and evidence that proves God's existence. It was a complete demonstration of the reality of Hashem and how the world had to be created, and there's a creator. There's a God who has no limits, omnipotent. He's master of the universe, master of existence, can play with the world as he wants. The laws of nature that he set into place, he could mix and mingle and change it completely and do things that are opposite the laws of nature. He changed the laws of the universe of nature for us. This is what silences all heretics who don't believe in Hashem as the creator. The story of Yetzias Mitzrayim substantiates our belief in Hashem. So this is why, according to the Chinuch, Yetzias Mitzrayim is, like you could say, one of the most important mitzvahs of the whole Torah, because it's the proof of Hashem's existence. And we don't speak of it as Anochi Hashem Elikecha, as the revelation that God did at Mount Sinai, as something like the Rambam says, Einenu Ro v'lo Zar. But the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim, that's proof positive of Hashem's existence and of the omnipotence of Hashem, His bli gvul. So that's number one level. The importance. The Chinuch is not getting into the mitzvah of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, Moschiyas Yetzias Mitzrayim, in light of what the Chinuch said they go together. The reason why we have to live with it every single day, because this is what strengthens and reinforces and enhances our life that it's fresh. Belief in Hashem is because since you believe in a creator, that means you believe in Amachadish B'tuvi B'chol Yom Tamid Ma'aseh Bereishis. And therefore you look at the whole world differently, and I don't have to elaborate now how every single second of your existence is different. When you realize that the world on its own, nothing is fixed in stone. There's a God, He created the world, He could change the world. And for the Jewish people, He made miracles. So in other words, we could say that the mitzvah of, according to the Chinuch, the mitzvah of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, and connected now on our own, to the mitzvah of Schilas Yetzias Mitzrayim, is because that reaffirms the existence of Hashem, the whole idea of Al Derech, believing in Hashem. But now I would like to say another point. Even though the Chinuch says what he says, and it's essential, and we have to start with that, just to bring out how monumental and how important it is, first of all, that it touches the very existence of Hashem. But I want to say another statement, if I may say so, and I believe it's correct. It's not about a statement of Hashem. The mitzvah Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, and Lisker Yetzias Mitzrayim, is not a statement about God, it's a statement about the Yidden. It's not a statement about Hashem, it's a statement about His people. It's a statement about His nation. And in a way you could say it's even more important. How do we see that? We see that. I'm gonna start with the question that we said before. What does it mean that we're free? Let's ask another question. Besides for the word that we said before, it's hard to relate to the fact that because it says that there were slaves, there remained slaves for 200 plus years, and not one slave escaped. So therefore, 3,000 years later, we should say we'd still be slaves. If not for that, we'd still be slaves today. It's hard to relate to that. But now let's ask another question. If we celebrate Pesach's Man Cheruseinu, I'm a free man. What do you mean I'm a free man? There was Churban Beis Hamikdash, there's a Tisha B'Av, there was a Stalin, there was a Hitler, 6 million Jews were slaughtered. Yimach Shemoy to the Nazis, were like Tokum Pamayim Tzara. There was an October 7th, there was a Bondi massacre. What do you mean we're free men? We're in Golus Rachmana Litzlan. And the answer is, starting with the Rebbe Rashab's famous immortal words, Not unsere Gufim sind in Golus, aber nicht unsere Neshamas. Only our bodies are in exile, but not our souls, and nothing and no power on this planet Earth could affect anything that's related to Torah mitzvahs. And here we come to the Maral Prague, who elaborated greatly in many of his svarim on the concept that the Yidden are nivdal. We'll call it transcendental, beyond. And that's what it means that we're a free man. And that's what it means, according to Chassidus especially, the mitzvah of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, and Leman Tizker, the mitzvah of Schiris Yetzias Mitzrayim. I want to read to you a Sikh of the Rebbe in Chelik Beis, Lekutei Sichos Chelik Beis, Parshas Shlach, page 325. Over there, the Rebbe discusses why we read, and by the way, the Alter Rebbe and the Rambam brings in Hilchos Krishma how we say the Parsha of Yetzias Mitzrayim with tzitzis at the end of Krishma 3 times a day. So what's the point behind it? And the Rebbe in the Sikh and Chelik Beis, I have to read it to the inside because I couldn't say it better. He speaks about why do we have to say it all the time? And the answer is because it's the greatest empowerment. Because this is the struggle. How does a Jew reconcile living in the hustle and bustle of the world, where not always nice guys get ahead? Somebody once said nice guys finish last. Rachmana litzlan. So what do we expect of a Jew? To swim against the current? To fight against the laws of the universe? To fight against the laws of nature? The limited laws of nature? We're going to lose. The whole discipline and structure of Yiddishkeit seems to be, in a way, anti-reality. Hey, Bechamatzias, let's say. So I'm going to read to you what the Rebbe says over here. The reason why we have to read the Parsha of Yetzias Mitzrayim every single day, because Mekendach, have patience please, I hope you forgive me, I usually don't like to read inside so much. Mekendach machan ha'cheshma, the derech ha'Torah is a hepech from derech ha'olam. It seems that the way of the Torah, the path of the Torah is unnatural. It's going in opposition to the world. Memon b'yim ezel hitn Shabbos and Yontiv, u'meis v'zay noch dazu Michael HaKodesh, keep Shabbos and Yontiv and even add from the mundane time to holiness. B'shas not competition from Goyim, I should close my store on a Saturday? And during Chol HaMoed, I shouldn't work. The Gentile word makes lots of jokes about these situations. They look at the calendar during September. You work for a living? You want to make money? You close 3/4 of the month. The Eibishter wants me to keep Shabbos and Yontif. I have competition for Goyim. I'm closing my store for the 3/4 of the month, and the whole every other store in the shopping mall is open, even ones that are selling the same merchandise. We demand from the first thing he gets up in the morning, he should daven and he should have a set time to learn. And then can he get into business, and then later he can go to the business. So that means I have to add another 2 hours to my day, which makes you more tired, which makes you more exhausting. Meanwhile, my competition could get up, have a full night's rest, get up 2 hours later, and be much more alert in the business, to be able to more savvy, to be able to make more money. Sein dich schön in the business, Montnen bei ihm, als mitten Tag, beschaßt dem rechten Koch vom Business, at the height of the business hour, right smack in the middle of it, soll alles ablosen und gehen da in Minche. Drop everything. It's prime time, high season to make money right now. This is the best trading hour on the market. But it's time to daven mincha. Drop everything and go daven mincha. Tear yourself away from whatever it is you're doing. Am I meant to be working on making a living now or not? Nope. When it's time to daven mincha, drop everything. But everyone else is still involved with their sleeves rolled up in deep. That's what makes mincha special, that you're able to tear yourself away from whatever you're doing and run to daven mincha. Und nachher bei Nacht, man soll daven und meiden, und dann kriegst du schon Mitte. Euch, man, bei ihm soll sein, geht von Gneve, Gzele, no, was soll es gewohl, wo das der Hepech und da kein Misker. We demand from everything in the business world to be honest, and there's no theft, and all the other, there's certain halachas that are very, very difficult to keep all these halachas and to have in mind that you should never take advantage. Wertig bei Mashaila, wie können sich führen al Piteira, bestaß es hat kein Schum Ort nicht in Welt. How can I conduct myself in a way of Torah where it seems like there's no room for such a lifestyle of such a standard, we'll call it a religiosity, or maybe even ethics and morality on a standard of the Torah in the so-called reality of the world that we're in now, where everyone else is not living by that standard. Of them Zokter. And for this reason, we read the Parsha of Yitzias Mitzrayim. We don't reckon with your logic reasoning. And you fulfill mitzvahs in a way, even though logically it seems to be doesn't make sense. So then the Eibishter conducts you in such a way that's also l'mayla magbol sateva. And this is why we read the words Ani Hashem Elokeichem asher yitzeiseis eretz Mitzrayim. That even in the circumstances, I feel ein Eved couldn't get out of Mitzrayim. It was megach al pi teva. And still the Eibishter redeemed an entire nation, and not only that, he made them rich. B'rechush godel. And he did everything, and like we spoke about today previously, what Chinuch said, everything was done in a manner of l'mayla me'ateva l'gamri. And the Rebbe brings out over here that when a Yid acts in such a way that he goes out of his nature, then the Eibishter performs miracles. To put it succinctly, obviously it's because it starts with the Eibishter is omnipotent, has limitations, and therefore we could have that. But the point is, it's a statement about us. What does it mean it's a statement about us? You could break out. Your lifestyle, your conduct could be in such a way which is transcendental. And here we have to add these words, transcendence. You know, I spoke many times about the three E's. Empowerment. I spoke many times about the three E's, and I believe it's a good point to remember, to make a simon in your head. There's three E's: enlightenment, empathy, and empowerment, and I believe it contains everything in a way. But there's one more thing that has to be said, which is higher than these three E's in a way, and that is a T, which is transcendence. Because even if we have enlightenment, and even if we have empathy, and even if we have empowerment, let's say, it could still have limits. In a way, you could say that even a Gentile could have enlightenment, and he could have empathy, and he could have empowerment. Let's say, I don't want to get into details now, but the idea of absolute transcendence, as the Maral says, a nation which is nivdal, that's only Jews. That's the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim. The Eibishter has no limits. And he injected us with this element, this particle of infinity. As the Alter Rebbe explains the pasuk, Re'ei, Anoichi Noisei Lifneichem. The Alter Rebbe explains that what the pasuk means, I took my Anoichi, Anon Nafshis K'Tovus Yahav, is my essence. Noisei, I inserted it and put it in. Lifneichem Lepnimiuschem. I God, you God. You know, there's the famous story. Me Jew, you Jew. Over here Hashem says, I God, you God. I put a spark and a particle of my infinity and I put it in you. And that's what it means. He chose the Jewish nation. That means the Jew could live a life which doesn't make sense according to all the rules of nature. So the whole world is keeping the store open on Saturday and seemingly making much more money than you. Guess what? Wonders of wonders, miracles of miracles. You'll close your store Shabbos and Yom Tov. Your business will be closed 3/4 of Tishrei, and you'll make more money than everyone else. And you'll tell that to somebody, and the person will say, does not compute, does not compute. You're going to fulfill the mitzvah of circumcision, which seems to be like you're harming yourself, and you'll live longer. You'll survive greater challenges. The Jewish nation has something that it says in the pasuk we had in Shmois, Kasha Ya'anu say, Kein Yirbe v'chein Yifritz. Does not compute. The more we were smashed, the more we were crushed, the more we were destroyed, with every blow we got stronger. Can that be? True. According to the laws of the universe, according to the natural laws of the universe, it's impossible. Does not compute. But since a Jew went out of Mitzrayim, it's a whole different story. We have that ability of transcendence. The laws of nature could be one thing. Mother Nature seems to be established a certain way from Hashem himself. Nevertheless, Yetzias Mitzrayim, break free. We're not limited by the laws of nature. Now the truth is, I see that it's already very late. I don't have to go past a certain time. I was going to talk more on a different aspect. Maybe we'll have to leave it for next year or maybe next Shabbos. I don't know, we'll see. I was so inspired when I realized the message, and I wanted to really speak another message over here on the V'Gadat Levincha. That's an instruction to parents and to teachers, to the She'eni Yidei Lishael. And what sort of chidush it is. And this answers the question to the educator who feels that he's dealing with a very difficult situation, the most difficult situation. The She'eni Yidei Lishael in a way. And still we say, the responsibility lies on you. The obligation is on your part. And that's why you could look at the word V'Gadata. It's like a proactive command. You got to speak. You got to tell. And there's no one around that's interested, that's asking questions. Create the recipient. Open him up. But you got to initiate in such a way that's going to trigger such a reaction. Wow, wow, wow. I think really, and I'm talking to myself now, we should have dedicated a whole shir just to focus on this point. I hope I'll remember the next time around to focus on it, because for me personally, it's a very telling, revealing, and relevant message, and I struggle with this many times. But let's go back to the subject matter at hand. What are we talking about? So let's translate it in practical terms. What does it mean to do a miracle? I think I said the famous story that everyone knows about the chassid that the Baal Shem Tov was very inspired by him. And it's the story that says in many places in different versions, so I'm not going to say it over again. The story with the person whose wife bit off the pitum of the esrog because she got angry that he spent and he saved money a whole year to buy this esrog. And the husband didn't say a word and he walked away thinking, so it seems I'm not worthy to be able to have a nice esrog. And the Baal Shem Tov told his disciples, that's the way the story is printed in the Sichos of the Frierdiker Rebbe. Such a test was never such a test as this, that this man, whose wife bit the esrog, the esrog, and made it unfit and possible after he saved up a whole year to buy that esrog. And he didn't respond with anger. Such a test has not been since the time of Avram Avinu with the Akedah, and he passed that test. The Rebbe said many times, what does a miracle mean? A miracle means when you control yourself and you exercise self-discipline. It could be very, very small. And that could be the greatest miracle of them all. Somebody wants to tell you a piece of Lashon Hara about somebody else, some gossip. Or you're dying to tell another person some piece of Lashon Hara. And you exercise your self-restraint that you don't listen to the Lashon Hara that the person wants to tell you, or you don't say it yourself. That's a miracle. And that's a nes. And that's Yetzias Mitzrayim. That's what we're talking about. To break out of your personal prison. Mitzrayim, Miloshem Meitzar Gvul. Yetzias Mitzrayim means break free. It can mean one person has a problem with anger management. Another person has a problem with addictions. Another person has a problem with procrastination. Another person has a problem with time management. And another person has a problem with complacency. In some places it says that there's something called Mitzrayim D'Kedusha. So every single one of us, bar none, is in some level of prison, has some limitations, something that's holding us back. And the order of the day that we get from this week's Parsha, and B'chol Deira Deira, B'chol Yom V'yom, Chayav Adam Lis, that's V'kilu Yotzim Mitzrayim. We have an obligation today to break out of whatever it is that's holding us back from the next level. And because we're a Jew, this is the Maaseh, why it's so important, the mitzvah of Schilas Yetzias Mitzrayim and Sipri Yetzias Mitzrayim, not as a statement about the Eibishter, but as a statement about you. Yes, you. You can do it. Never give up. Whatever limitation you have in your personal development, because you're a Yid, you were given that koyach from the Eibishter himself, a noichi, my essence, noisen of nechem, I put into you, and that's what makes you a Jew. You're forever a free man. You have that ability that transcends whatever the limitations are, that a person can't go out of his nature. Whatever it is, you can do it. You can break free. You can become a totally free person. So the Eibishter helped that we should exercise our Yetzias Mitzrayim, our going out of Golus on a primistic level, like the Rebbe spoke in the Sikha, by the way, of Chavches Nissen, the famous Sikha, where he said, Und noch mehr, mis geblieben in the Golus Pnimische bekol echad b'yachas. So the Rebbe was lamenting not so much the situation in the physical world, tragedies or things that are going on, which is of course terrible and horrendous. But the noch mehr, mis geblieben in the Golus Pnimische bekol echad b'yachas. There's a level of inner exile, which the Rebbe was trying to say, but that's in your control. Let's work harder in our inner exile. I'm talking to myself. And when each and every single one of us will demand a bit more, to be freer, and to be able to say, I feel more liberated, and I'm therefore more exhilarated. So by each and every single one of us, step by step, exercising our power of redemption, this will also bring about the Gula Klolis. And this is, the idea of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and the idea of the Rebbe, the Rashvi. The whole point was to make it happen. All the Rabbeim, the Frierdiker Rebbe especially, was always fighting against oppressive regimes, tyrants, governments, limitations. Whether it was the Russians or whether even the Germans when he was in Warsaw, continuing to do Maimorim and things, and Chassidus, and especially in America, fighting the secular atmosphere and screaming the war cry, the spiritual war cry, America is nitandish. And then the Rebbe is sending shluchim. Does not compute logically. You're sending a shliach to Idaho, you're sending a shliach to Montana, you're sending a shliach to Kentucky. There's many stories where people said, Rabbi Groner used to say, that somebody once said a story, like hair will grow on my palm, you'll be able to accomplish this and this over there. And then you look back further, 20 years later, 30 years later, the vision of the Rebbe that the entire world became uplifted. But that's all by not listening to the naysayers and to those that are presenting all the problems of the limitations. How can we go over to a Jew on Fifth Avenue and say, are you Jewish? Can you put on film? That's a Yetzias Mitzrayim. Right there on the spot on Fifth Avenue or on Rodeo Drive, we're going to transcend and put on film. Something that was never done before. And yet, people looked at it completely strange. But the Rebbe in Deir HaShvi said, do it. We did it. And now it's norm. We broke a level, a barrier. And so on and so forth. We should continue breaking barriers until we break the ultimate barrier of the Golos that we're now, Begula Mitzvah Shleima, take from Yad Mamish, posting from my home in Melbourne, Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, your man in Melbourne.